good morning, good afternoon and good evening to you, the good people of the tube. I'm not quite in the room again. I will be in a minute. Q&A number 10, Wednesday. Yes, I think. Where am I? Question 1. Okay, sorry about that. That was probably the longest intro to a Q&A ever. Anyway, yes, let's get to question 1, shall we? I wasn't quite in the room when I finished that. I kind of got a bit lost in that. But anyway, question 1 today. What would you consider essential practice habits to get better at guitar? That's kind of like a, I don't know, it's kind of a personal thing. It's kind of like certain things that work for some people won't work for others. But what I will say is there's kind of like a couple. There's playing as much as you can, like playing every day, even if it's just like for 5 minutes a day, that helps no end, it really does. So I would say kind of playing every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, excuse me, just like running a song or just, you know, just messing around or whatever. Learning songs front to back, every part, guitar solos, riffs, chords, that helps no end. There is nothing better than learning, nothing better for you as a kind of a guitar player and you know, a progressing guitar player to learn songs front to back. It really is kind of like, you know, the best thing in the world to do, and to play along with it to the record, CD, you know, iPod, whatever. You know, those things. That's kind of like really kind of key to getting better, is playing music. You know, and that kind of brings me neatly into the last point, which is theory. Theory is one of those kind of like, it's like a black hole. If you kind of dive into it, you can kind of get lost in it. Whereas, I think you should just kind of like be dipping your toe into theory, really, unless you kind of want, like, literally just want to get, like, you know, soaked in it. That's cool as well. But I think sometimes theory can get in the way and destroy the fun of music if you go too far in it, if that makes any sense. So I'm a kind of like a very kind of big kind of believer in you learn what you need, not what people tell you should learn. Like, you know, if you just want to like do rock and blues guitar solos and you know, stuff like reggae solos and stuff like that, you don't need to know your harmonic minor or super Locrian or this, that and the other. You don't really need to know them, so it's kind of like, you know, it's just wasted brain space on stuff you're never going to use. So I would always recommend you learn what you want to learn, what you need to learn, should I say, not really kind of like, you know, just because somebody said you need to learn the super Locrian mode. You know, you don't need to know it, you know, unless you're kind of going into that kind of realm. But again, that kind of depends on what you're kind of wanting to learn. But essential practice habits are definitely play every day and learn songs. Learn the songs you love to play and play along with them. You know, doing that for 5 minutes every day, you will notice a difference, even if it's just like 5 minutes. If you can get longer, wicked. But just 5 minutes a day of playing this thing and just going through a song really does help. So I would definitely kind of like consider them as kind of practice habits to get better at. Also kind of like being disciplined enough to know that when you pick up a guitar one day and it just isn't happening, to put it down. I'm terrible at that. Some days you'll pick up a guitar and it will just not happen. It will just not happen. The guitar will hate you and you will hate it. And it's as simple as that. And that's those days like that, you have to just put the guitar down and do something else, because, you know, you're just going to get frustrated, and if you get frustrated, you don't learn. Your brain doesn't log anything in, it just gets annoyed. So it's that kind of thing, and having a discipline to do it, basically. So yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of went a bit on tangent. I always go on tangents. I'm a tangent man! I don't know, not from an 18th century here, Dave. Anyway, but yeah, consider essential practice habits, definitely learning songs, and learning the theory you need to learn, not what, you know, everything, and just having fun. You know, just don't ever feel like it's a chore. You know, it's just good fun. Anyway, hope I've answered your question. Moving on to question 2 now. Okay, so question 2. Well, question 1 leads nice and neatly into question 2, which is what are my opinions on pure technique exercises? I reckon it's kind of essential to kind of work on your technique, especially kind of like, you know, if you're kind of like a beginner, because that's the way you develop your own kind of style. But you know, by emulating others and just trying to kind of like do things that others do, so to say, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I do think it's kind of important to kind of like, work on your technique. But again, I would do it. I reckon it's important to learn your technique in a practical way, not a theoretical way. Basically, like, if you know how to do your minor pentatonic, like that, running that all day, every day is not going to develop you as a guitarist at all. And that's just theoretical running scales. It's not a musical thing. Whereas, if you get a backing track of a 12-bar blues, which is always great to kind of practice over 12-bar blues, they're kind of like key. There's really nice, very forgiving kind of chord progressions for you to kind of play over. You can kind of start to incorporate different kind of, instead of just kind of going, running that scale to a metronome, you can kind of start to incorporate kind of, more of a musical sense, so to say. So it's less theoretical, more practical, and you've got backing as well, so you can kind of hear. So you've got this kind of musical backing instead of just being a theoretical backing of, this is in this key, here's a metronome kind of thing. I hope that makes sense. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but your technique will develop over time. Technique is a thing that develops. It's not something that can be kind of like got in a day. You can't learn it in a day. But the more you do it, and the more you learn songs and play along to songs, like I said in question 1, your own technique will come out. You will develop your own technique, which will be an amalgamation of all your heroes' techniques. So you'll have like certain little phrases that, like, say, Jimi Hendrix used or Slash used, and then you'll mush them together and they'll become your own thing. So working on your technique is really, really important, but it has to be in a practical sense, not a theoretical sense. Not to a metronome, not that kind of thing. Literally to kind of like play along with a song, using what you know, and just experimenting and just playing around and just seeing how you can kind of like make things work for you and what you like to hear. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question. Moving on to question 3 now. Okay, so question 3, I don't think I can answer this one. What is my favourite John Frusciante song? I don't think I can answer it. I really don't. I've got so many, and so many of his songs mean a lot to me. So it's really hard to pick. Just yes, that one there. It's really difficult. So I can't really answer that. I'm afraid. I'm really sorry, but I do love I love so much of John's music. It's really hard to just pick one. So yeah, all of them. Anyway. Yeah, it's not really an answer, is it? I do apologise, but it is so hard to pick, like, my favourite John song, because I love them so, like, I love so many of his songs so much, it's just, like, really, it's like, it's impossible, I just can't do it. So yeah, sorry, that's not really an answer, is it? But, hopefully you understand what I mean by, I can't pick. Okay, so moving on to question 4 now. Question 4 is, how do you tremolo pick on the low strings? You said you can kind of do it on the high strings, but on the low strings, you kind of like, because you rest, yeah, because when you're tremolo picking on the high strings, you kind of rest your hand on the low strings, can't you? But when you go to the low strings, there's nowhere to rest your hand. What I tend to do is kind of a thing I've learned from Dick Dale and Gary Moore, is to kind of float my hand. Yes, turn your volume up, Dave. That'll make all the difference in volume, because no amp is on right now. Anyway, I kind of tend to float my hand, and I play quite far back. I can kind of... But Gary Moore would kind of go like that, and Dick Dale kind of does this. But it's just a case of kind of anchoring your hand, like that part of your hand, on the guitar body, I would say. And just kind of like going at it more than anything else. But yeah, because on the high strings, it is a lot easier to tremolo pick on those high strings than it is the low strings. But I would say, if you can rest that part of your hand, that kind of like, the big bit on the base of your thumb, on the guitar body, you can kind of get it going, so to say. So that'd be kind of how I do it, and I kind of learn it from watching Gary Moore and Dick Dale. Dick Dale is like the king the tremolo picking thing. His tremolo picking is ridiculous. Considering he's like gauge 16 strings or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, I would say if you can kind of rest your hand, let it all come from like your wrist, and to kind of do that. But yeah, just find a place to anchor your hand. You know, if it's here, play there. You know, just kind of like go between, you know, up and down the string, find out where's comfy best for you, really. But that's how I do it. It's to kind of anchor that part of my hand on the body there, and you know, just do it like that. Yeah, I hope that's answered your question. So moving on to question 5 now. Okay, so question 5 is, how do you develop your own style but retain your influences? So, I don't know. It's just one of those things that happens. It's not something that can kind of... I always use an example. John Mayer once said, you sound like yourself when you fail to sound like your heroes. And I think that's the key to this, is, you know, through emulating your heroes, be it whoever it is, you end up eventually with your own style, because it's an amalgamation of all your heroes. Like, I don't like if you've got kind of influences of, like, say, Slash and Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, say, you mush them all together, you know, and you emulate all those three. Eventually, you all kind of like create this kind of create you. If that might sound a bit weird. Yeah, it's just a kind of like, it just takes time, really. Kind of like your influence is always heard. Like, if you listen to any guitarist, you can hear their influences if you kind of like listen hard enough. Like people like, you know, Jimi Hendrix and Peter Green and John Frusciante, you can hear all their influences. Sorry. You just got to kind of like, sometimes you have to kind of dig deep, but they are an amalgamation of all their heroes in one big kind of like, you know, ball, so to say. So what I would say is just kind of emulate all your heroes and just trying to like mash them together. Like, oh, I like this bit of this guy and I like this bit of this person and this. And what happens if I put that with that and stick it together? And that way you kind of develop your own kind of thing, so to say, your own kind of like, you know, guitar licks and chord progressions and riffs and so on and so forth. So, but it takes time. It's like anything with guitar. It takes time. You've got to be really patient. Sorry, I got interrupted. Anyway, yes, but like I said, you do have to be patient to develop your own kind of style. I mean, I'm not the best to talk about it because I don't feel I have my own style or anything like that. Mine is an amalgamation of, like, you know, there's John Frusciante, there's Jimi Hendrix, there's Peter Green, there's Mike McCready, and there's Rory Gallagher. But Rory Gallagher kind of crops up more in the way I sing, but I'm nowhere near as good a singer as Rory was. But yeah, all those kind of 5 guys, I've kind of like tried to mush them together, really, with a little bit of Paul Kossoff thrown in every now and again. But I think that's the kind of key to it, is just emulating everybody and just taking bits you like from everybody and sticking them all together, and that way you develop you. And it sounds weird, but that's the only way I can kind of like think of it happening, so to say. There's not many people who pick up a guitar in their life and just have their own thing straight off the bat. I don't think it happens that way. It comes from emulation and just learning and, you know, copy and pasting, basically, you know, to use a kind of generic term. But it does take time, you know, the patience you need to kind of develop that, you know, that's kind of like a key point. It comes back to, like, you know, question 1 and 2 of technique and practice habits. You know, the patience to stick at this is kind of key, and that goes with, you know, practicing, learning stuff and developing your own style. It is really down to kind of like patience and just taking your time, letting it come naturally and not forcing it. You know, it will happen eventually. You just can't go, well, I'm going to sit down today and create my own style. It won't happen. That will not happen. So yeah, I mean, your influences will always be there. That, you know, you'll always hear your influences. Even if you don't hear them, somebody else will. Someone will go, oh, that sounds like Peter Green or whatever. You know, so just take everything you want from one person, take everything you want from another person, take everything you want from another person, and just mash them all together, and you'll develop your own kind of things, let's say. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question. Yeah, moving on to question 6 now. Okay, so question 6 is, do I get pain in my neck and back? You play guitar a lot. How do you cope? When I was a younger lad, I never used to kind of have anything like that. I used to carry like Marshall double stacks around to every gig and never really have any issues with my back or anything like that. But as I'm getting older now and time's getting on and I'm getting a bit older, I don't know anymore. Yeah, I am starting to get shoulder problems. My left shoulder actually is becoming an issue recently. I'm actually going to have to get it. I'm going to get it sorted out soon, and I'm having to kind of like, you know, go easy, so to say. It's just years and years of gigging and having a guitar on my shoulder and lugging heavy stuff around that I couldn't actually kind of carry and straining and stuff like that, and just, you know, generally doing that kind of stuff. It does eventually get your neck and your shoulders and your back. How do I cope with it? Is just basically relaxing, you know, and stretching. That's kind of like key to it all, really. It's just kind of like learning to kind of warm up, so to say. You've got to warm up, you've got to stretch, you've got to kind of like, you know, do all these things to kind of get your body working for you, because eventually, you know, it won't, and you're going to be in trouble. So I'm from kind of like now on, I'm starting to kind of like, you know, do kind of finger warm ups and start to stretch more of my shoulders and just kind of like, you know, trying to limber up, so to say, before I play, because I think you're very lucky if you go through playing guitar, your entire guitar playing career, without having some kind of back problem or shoulder problem that needs to be looked at some point, you know, and your arms aching and your wrist aching, your fingers hurting. So yeah, I mean, it's just a case of just take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't play this, and if you can't play this, and you want to play this, that's just absolutely the most depressing thing in the world. So, yeah, it's just take care of yourself. Padded straps help. Since I've had this strap on this guitar, because this is super heavy, the vintage the Lemon Drop. Since I've had this padded strap on this guitar, it has just been so much nicer to play. I used to have another strap on it. I think it was a Levi strap I had on it, and it I could feel all the weight of the guitar dragging my left shoulder down, and my right one would try and compensate for it, and then I'd hunch over and do my back in, and I'm terrible for hunching. I've got a terrible kind of like, you know, lazy stance, so to say. But yeah, I would say, you know, just look after yourself, stretch out, warm up, get your muscles working, you know, and get everything kind of warmed up before you do kind of play for a long period of time. If you just play for 5 minutes, that's not necessarily kind of that important, but I would still recommend you do a little bit of it anyway. And it's kind of one of those things you kind of really need to do every day, just so you don't seize up and lose the ability, really, because, you know, you got to kind of look after yourself. So yeah. But yeah, I'm starting to have shoulder and neck pain and back pain from gigging and stuff though. So yeah, it's time to kind of like start taking a bit more care of myself, so to say, which isn't easy. I'll probably explain why in another video another day. But anyway, that's a darker subject for another time. So yeah, so that's question 6. Let's move on to question 7 now. Okay, so question 7 today, final question of Q&A 10. Every time I use my wah-wah pedal, I get a white noise sound. Is there any way to reduce this? Yes. It's dust in the pot of your wah-wah pedal. You say you got a Vox wah-wah pedal. Just basically a case of get some switch cleaner. Servasol is what I use. It's kind of like, I think it's kind of the best kind of stuff. It's kind of like a red and white kind of can. It's like an aerosol. Take the 4 screws out the bottom of the, take the foot screws out the wah pedal, take the thingy off, you'll see the pot, spray some stuff in there, move it about, it should go away. But wah pedals are always going to be a bit scratchy, unless they're a certain kind of wah pedal. Like Vox wah pedals are very kind of scratchy, they always will be. Ibanez wah pedals are scratchy, Crybabies, every now and again, the one I've got, which I don't use, is quite clean actually. It's quite a nice kind of like clean kind of sound. But I prefer the Vox one. So it's always going to be a little bit scratchy, but yeah, you do need some kind of switch cleaner in the pot on the on the wah-wah pedal, and that should sort that out for you. Yes, so I hope that's answered your question. I hope that's answered your questions okay for Q&A 10. And I'll see you again on Friday for another video. Have a great morning, afternoon, and good evening. Goodbye now.